All right. I think you do it again. I like you leading us off.
Welcome back to the Poor Sports Podcast.
Yeah, my voice is back.
It is. I didn't even. Yeah, I totally forgot about that. We had
Yeah.
other things going on, but
Yeah.
it is nice to
We
hear.
did have other things going on. It's so funny to say that, knowing what's coming for the listener, where it's like a big thing happened.
I would say stay tuned. You're going to get immediate payoff at the start of this podcast, but some pretty big news. Pretty big news coming your way, and it's not that Casey's voice is back, although it
Yeah.
is nice that he's a fully functioning human being.
It happened overnight. I was drunk one night, woke up the next morning, pretty good. I don't know why. I mean, that was rough, man. It was like 3 weeks of fighting it.
The one thing we learned through this 2 to 3 week process of you losing your voice is that alcohol seemed to help.
Yeah, I do think.
You wouldn't think that. You'd think it'd be
Yeah.
the opposite of that. A lot of tea and water, maybe some honey in that tea. But when you were having beers, things were good.
Yeah,
Things were good. The voice
listen,
came back. It
I think
responded.
we've learned something. My doctor, I don't need him anymore. We learned alcohol is the cure.
This is how it starts, and then you never go see a doctor again, and then suddenly they find you dead in a rocking chair.
What do we talk about? We talked about, well, my big news. That
Your big news, which we'll share. We talked about the story of the week. You got to stay till the end to hear that one, but everyone knows this story by now. It doesn't need our opinions, but it's going to get it anyway.
Yeah.
Angel Reese, Caitlin Clark, the Women's National Championship controversy. We are absolutely qualified as mostly white males to weigh in.
Yeah,
on
we're
this.
3/4 white as a podcast.
So we're going to do that.
Yeah.
We talked about some baseball stuff.
By the way, I think we gotta start playing up your. We gotta get on some minority-owned businesses for this. We got to start playing up your.
my one half of
Yeah.
me that's a minority.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
If any local restaurants wanted to sponsor us, that'd be great because
Oh
we
my
love. Just look at us. We clearly
Yeah.
like food.
And I'm not picky. That's
No, it could be anything. If Applebee's wants to step up, I'll take some nachos. That's fine.
Hell yeah.
We talked about some baseball things, PitchCom, the pitch clock, which
Yeah.
is obviously an early controversy in the season. And of course, we weighed in on our legal analyst on this podcast.
We brought a legal analyst on
And
to talk about.
You'll find out who that is, but there's a lot of legal stuff going on in the world this week, and we wanted to go straight to an expert. And we found one who knows a thing or two about the legal process. So
Yep.
you'll hear from him.
So follow me at DKC McLean.
Alex SSN.
And then June 25th, Tacoma Comedy Club. Come on out. And then eventually we'll start doing live shows. So keep an eye out for that. And we're going to start live streaming this podcast potentially. So subscribe on YouTube, please.
So you can get your insults in real time.
Yeah, we will. I'm willing to interact with the chat. Absolutely.
I think that would add an element. Like the two
Yeah.
people that are on there will be.
We're just having a conversation with both mutual friends of ours.
It's like when a band does an intimate acoustic set, but really all that means is no one wanted to come.
All right.
All right. Thanks for listening.
All right. Here we are. I think we're doing it.
We're back.
Official, whether we want to be or not, we're doing it.
It's a daytime pod today.
Yeah, 10:30 a.m. We did one. Like 3 feels like it's midday,
Yeah.
and
Yeah,
we did one then. We've never done one this early.
We've done it at all times a day. I don't know if you're getting the best of us or the worst of us. It's hard to say.
I feel like this is about. If they would do comedy shows at noon, I might be the biggest comedian in the fucking world. Because I'm so tired by the time I get to a comedy show.
Yeah. It's a younger person's game, it feels like. And
Thank you. That's what they keep telling me anytime I'm.
I feel like it's a lifestyle that if you are married or have children could be
Yeah.
very difficult. Like it doesn't work into the standard 9 to 5 by any means.
You've been talking to my wife? Jesus Christ.
I feel like this is that, but that's like you watch enough comics, you follow enough comics, you kind of understand that it's a tough lifestyle for family life.
We're sacrificing for you folks. This
Yes,
is us. Oh wait, hold on. I fucking am stupid. Jesus, we're back. It's it feels like it has been a while since I think we should. All right, we'll have figured out the switching thing there. Let me fix this real quick. Jesus, amateur hour.
It's okay. It's early. It's very early.
Yeah. So comedy. So if I edited it out, we were talking about how comedy is not great. Very conducive to 9 to 5 life. We have news in that department. I have news in that department.
We do. You have news, yes.
Hopefully you don't have news.
Nothing like yours. Yeah.
I got laid off from my day job 2 days ago.
Yeah. Unfortunate times. The good news is we have way more time for this podcast now.
Yes, it will get not better, but maybe we'll talk about it more outside of this podcast.
I will say that getting laid off or any type of like negative life event, if you are a comic, is fuel. It feels like as somebody who likes to make a lot of jokes myself, anytime bad shit happens to me, it's usually good for everyone else's entertainment.
Yeah, it takes something like really tragic for me to not. I've had two true life tragedies happen since I started doing comedy. One is my cousin died when I was very young, and I had just started comedy, and he was 21 years old, and I just like shut down comedy for a while, like a month or something like that. Because I just didn't feel like doing it. I was like very sad. And we were also, he died a month before I got married. So it was like just a very stressful time.
Yeah. It's an emotional, you're going through the whole range of emotions in that moment, I'm sure.
Yeah. And I mean, yeah, exactly. There's like so much stress around the wedding. He was supposed to be a groomsman, by the way.
Oh, yeah.
It was it was pretty fucked up. And then another time, a high school friend of mine died. And I knew that he was like on, this is like very selfish, but he was like on life support. Like it was not looking great. And I saw that I got a text from the like Facebook group that his wife had created. Mm-hmm. And I was about to go on stage, and I just fucking put my phone on airplane mode, went up and did it, and then came off and read what I assumed was going to be the bad news.
I understand that. You have to, in that moment, you have to focus on what you know you got to do.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, because I was like literally within 2 minutes of I need to be on stage being funny.
I wouldn't say that's selfish so much as that's like self-preservation.
Sure.
Yeah, I feel like there's a difference there. Selfish would be like if you had nothing to do and you were like, nah.
Yeah. So first off, like I'll be fine. Financially, we're going to be okay. But we don't live, this is a nice thing about being a millennial is I don't live a very like frugal lifestyle. If we just cut back on fucking Grubhub and DoorDash, I think we might be making the same amount of money.
I get when the older generations look at our generation and start using lines that include the word bootstraps. It's because we spend too much money on food. It's because we buy things we want. It's because I feel like especially like the boomer generation, our parents' generation, they lived in misery out of their own volition. They chose to be miserable because that's how you were supposed to do things.
Yeah.
And we don't do that. we hike up the national debt. You know, we do all of these things that are generally frowned upon in the past to live our best lives. But overall, we actually turn out okay in the end.
Yeah, I'll defend millennials against boomers. Pretty much, my parents are both boomers, and I'll defend us as equally bad at worst, is what I would say.
Right.
We all have positive and negative qualities. We'll be fine. Unemployment, whatever, it'll be good in ways. There's part of me that is excited. I've never been unemployed outside of the April 2020. So like 3 weeks after the beginning of kind of the U.S. Involvement in COVID.
Right.
I've never been I was laid off for 1 month. Besides that, I haven't been unemployed since I was 17 years old. So I've never had I've never had 2 weeks straight off of any job ever as an adult or a 17-year-old.
Yeah, it's because I know I work in tech, so I know a lot of people that get laid off with some frequency.
Yeah.
And there's a big difference between losing your job when you're in your 20s and then when you're in your 30s. When you're in your 20s, you lose your job. It's a crisis situation.
Yeah.
When you get a little bit older, I mean, I know a lot of people that got laid off reacted very similarly to you, where in a lot of ways it feels like a sense of relief.
Yeah.
And then, depending on their situation or their circumstance, they go live their best life while they're unemployed and really enjoy things. I mean, It's different when you have a family for sure, but
Yeah, but we've set ourselves up. Like my wife works.
Yeah.
We again, like we have many. We have a lot of fat to trim if we want to. We don't always want to, but I was going through. I'm like, we haven't watched Netflix in fucking 6 months. Like we, there's like
it's those things like that. Yeah, I
Yeah.
totally get it, man. We all have a bazillion streaming services
Yeah.
that we all infrequently use.
Do you have an Audible account?
I'm going to tell you a story really quick about an Audible account.
All right. Oh God. Did you get your identity stolen and they
No.
put millions into Audible?
This is, speaking of jobs, my old employer, who was notoriously frugal. So I have Amazon Prime, as a lot of people do. And a year and a half ago or so, Amazon Prime, they'll often send you little deals here. And a lot
Sure.
of times it's like, hey, 6 months of Audible free or whatever the term is. We've all gotten an email about Audible
Yeah.
where you get it for free. And literally on the same day that I get this email about getting, 6 months of Audible free or whatever it is, my old employer gives us our holiday gift. Now, in the past, the holiday gift could range from like cash
Sure.
to, gift cards that you would actually want to use. Even if you don't give a gift, just like showing appreciation around a time like the holidays is important, right?
Yeah.
But the company at the time is not doing great. Morale's a little low. And they give us the exact same Audible offer as a holiday gift that I just got an email about that I
Wow.
declined. So they're like, here's 6 months of Audible for free. And I'm like, come on. Like,
Do you think they paid money
joke.
for it?
It's iffy, man. I really don't know.
wow.
Everybody who got, it was one of those things that behind the company's back, everyone's kind of joking about.
Yeah. Damn.
So you would have been better off just not giving a gift, I think,
Yeah.
for a lot of people. It's because anyone who had Amazon Prime got the email.
Yeah.
Email about
and
like,
anyone
this
that had
free offer.
Amazon Prime is everybody that works for the whole company.
And also, Audible is one of those things like it's a read the room situation.
Sure.
Everybody. I don't drink coffee, but I'll still use a Starbucks card, right? I can go get
Sure.
a sandwich there. I can go get some other sort of drink.
Yeah.
But not everybody likes books
Audiobooks.
on audiobooks. Yeah, it's
That's
just not their
interesting.
thing. Yeah,
That's a fucked up. That is what the fact that it came at the same. That is like almost a fucking sitcom plot line.
It really was. It was one of those things that like even the most optimistic people behind the scenes are like, yeah, it wasn't a great gift. Everybody kind of admits that
Sure.
it was bad. It's like if you don't have the money for a gift, we would rather have you just say that than
absolutely.
get the worst gift ever.
Yeah. Also, by the way, I should say, you and I have talked off the podcast that I thought this was coming.
Yeah.
It's the tech industry is getting crushed right now. I actually saw this kind of interesting, this graph. It was Andrew Yang, but basically it was the jobs, some jobs creation or whatever, or maybe unemployment rate in the tech sector.
Yeah.
Leading up to the release and popularization of ChatGPT, and that it was a huge drop in employment because I think people went fuck, we might be able to do this without any of these people.
AI is replacing a lot of people. Yeah.
Yeah, but then I will say since then, it's slowly creeping back up because I think what a lot of people are realizing is the ChatGPT maybe isn't quite ready for prime time in a lot of cases.
It will berate people, abuse them. It doesn't
Sure.
work the way it's supposed to.
Sure.
This is a very tech nerd conversation we're having right now. But we've one of the things we've talked about is that I think having both worked in the tech industry, and of course we both work in the tech industry, being in the Seattle area,
Sure.
everybody does. You have to have people skills to actually excel in this industry now. If you are strictly a developer, strictly an engineer, somebody who's just kind of behind the scenes, I think it does put you more at risk than maybe people that actually
Sure.
interface with others.
This what
right?
what it sounds like right now to the listener, because they haven't heard our conversation, is that you're going, the reason you got fired is because you don't have fucking people skills.
Yeah. That's the thing, though. Even if you thought we didn't have people skills compared to other
Oh, yeah.
people in that
I'm like
industry,
Elvis.
yeah, compared to other, just the fact that we can carry on a conversation puts
Yeah.
us above the majority of the people in software industry.
Yeah, for sure.
And, I think back to when I was a kid, my dad worked in the newspaper industry, which is perpetually been an industry that is at risk of layoffs.
It's flourishing and growing constantly.
Yeah, it's only getting better from here.
Yeah.
But the first time I remember hearing about layoffs, and he was lucky he never got laid off, but you hear about them and you equate them to firing. And as a kid, the only thing you know about losing a job is that it's a very negative, bad experience.
Yeah.
And usually your boss yells at you and tells you you're a terrible human being in so many words, because that's what you see on TV and in movies. And it's not like that at all. You learn to find out. In a lot of ways, it can be a good thing as you kind of like evolve into other points in your life.
Yeah.
So I know it'll only get better for you, but it sucks in the moment.
Yeah, it's. I will say, my pride is hurt. I've never been laid off. I've never been fired from a job before. Mm-hmm. And even, by the way, like I worked in fucking scary industries in 2008. Because this is actually my first tech job. Maybe my last tech job, to be honest with you. But no, I don't think so. We'll see. I have a lot to give the tech industry. But I've worked in like dicey industries. During
cockfighting.
Yeah, cockfighting took a huge downturn in 2008. You don't realize that in 2008 we thought it was just housing and consumer goods, but cockfighting 62%.
Illicit entertainment, the entire industry plummeted.
Yeah, it got crushed, and you wouldn't think so because I think porn was holding it up.
Strip club MC.
Yeah, oh man, that guy got brutalized. But yeah, I've been lucky, and it's also like you go, I'm 36, I have a kid on the way. Like my dad experienced, like he's retired I think 2 years ago now, but he. At the end of his career, he couldn't, like, basically he'd apply for jobs and they wouldn't even call him. And he's like incredibly qualified, overqualified. And it's like, yeah, the dude's 65. Like, we don't want this guy. Yeah. And it's funny though, because like you said, tech industry people kind of get used to getting laid off. This is something that I'm not used to. Yeah. But it's kind of one of the things that to me is appealing about the tech industry. And again, to bring it back to the positives of this are, I do get a stretch of time now where I can focus my energy on shit that I care about a lot, like podcasting, like comedy. We'll see. My optimistic goal is to start streaming. Well, streaming this podcast live is one thing. I'd like to start streaming my own podcast, the Nobody Likes Casey McLean podcast, live. You and I have talked about this podcast project. I don't know if you remember, but it's like Seattle related. I think this is the time I could do it. It doesn't take that much time and energy.
If people can have a successful podcast just about taco time,
that's true.
You can pretty much hone in on any niche.
Yes, that's true. I also, by the way, if my wife or family is listening, I'm also going to do home projects. We have a lot of work to do before this new kid comes.
I will cross everything off on the list that will get done in my spare time.
Yes.
And you work in another industry from which you cannot get laid off, which is comedy.
Yes.
You can get canceled, I suppose.
Yeah, you can't officially. There's no unemployment at least.
No official unemployment. No one has to have a tough conversation with you.
Yeah. Well, the nice thing about this too is it really forces my wife's hand to let me do more comedy, because one of the things that
I thought you were going to say it forces her hand to really go out and earn money.
You better go work,
this
lady.
Household.
No, a common, and I think it's a lot of comedians, but like a common argument we have is how much time comedy takes. Yeah. Going on the road, doing shows at night, it can be destructive to a family dynamic, and now we're going to really test the limits of how destructive it can be. The nice thing is like when it's destructive otherwise, when you have a full-time job and then you do comedy at night, you're like, you get, 2 hours with your family if you're lucky. Do I spend that time cleaning the kitchen? Do I spend that time cleaning out the garage? Do I spend it with them? Something is going to get neglected along the way. Now, while I have these days free, nothing should get neglected that I was otherwise spending my time working. So the golf game's going to get better.
Even with more time, the golf game doesn't often get better. So I wouldn't get your hopes up there, but maybe.
Yeah. It's going to be, there will be cool shit. Hopefully also, and then the other thing is you go like, hopefully I'm employed again soon, but I'm not, I'm at a point in my career where I'm not going and taking fucking a job flipping burgers because I make more money on unemployment for now doing that. So let's, folks, fucking follow this podcast, make this work. Let's make this work. Let's make this period of time, this brief stretch where I don't have a job, let's make this the time where Alex and I get a fucking career in internet entertainment. And
that's a lot of pressure.
Well, listen, Alex is going to keep his job, but that's because he has it. One in the hand.
That's true.
Yeah.
You finally, and at least temporarily, achieved your dream of being a stay-at-home dad.
And a full-time comedian. Yeah.
You can start a new podcast called Stay at Home Dad.
Yes, I do think there's a comedian, which I hesitate right now to even talk about other comedians, which I haven't even told you about this, but I had and I'm not going to talk about it on the podcast.
Oh, okay.
But I had a controversy with a comedian that
Wow.
because of, by the way, many events have transpired since that make it very unpalatable to talk about this.
Yeah.
But I'm there was a comedian, what I will say, who had a podcast, a stay-at-home dad podcast, who I will not be emulating.
Okay. Sure. Yeah, I get it.
Okay. So other than that, besides this monumental event in my life, we are in the middle of a just absolutely historic time in our country because former President Donald Trump was indicted, becoming the first president or former president in the history of the United States to become indicted. And listen, this is not the podcast if you want hard-hitting legal analysis, hard-hitting political analysis. We would never subject you to that. What we would do, though, is we have some video from one of the nation's leading legal experts talking on this. And this is a podcast where we watch videos of other people talking about shit. And so I think it's time for us, and I'm going to try to, I'm going to try to, in real time, do this fucking streaming thing. Oh, look at that. Look at that. It actually worked.
There it is.
Okay,
this is a man who knows a thing or two about crime.
We got a guy that knows a thing or two about the legal system here, and we'll pause it and bounce through it.
Hey, Twitter world, it's me, yours truly. Well, we had a couple of interesting court cases today. Gwyneth Paltrow.
My favorite thing, I got to imagine there are people in the world who don't know who this is when he says, "Hey, Twitter." I mean, I know that his handles there.
Truly, yeah.
Yeah, but like this, "Hey, Twitter world, it's yours truly" means everything to me. I know exactly who that is.
That's OJ every time. You know, if you just saw him right now, he kind of looks like the news journalist, the news anchorman, Lester Holt.
Yes,
you know
he
Lester
does.
Holt, because his hairline has gone so far back, but he's still clinging to it.
Yeah.
But Lester Holt has that, where his hairline starts at the back half of his head, but it's still there. It's still there.
It's on his lower back at this point, but
It's got finished.
and he said Gwyneth
and I was
Paltrow.
so
Gwyneth
glad
Paltrow,
to
by the
hear
way.
that she won the case. And more importantly, I was glad to hear that the guy lost the case. I mean, this guy's going to sue somebody because he was had a crash on a ski slope.
Are you familiar with that case at all?
Is that a thing that really happened?
Yeah, so they crashed into each other on a ski slope, and he sued her for like a bunch of money.
Trump did this?
No.
Oh, this is the Gwyneth Paltrow case?
This is the Gwyneth Paltrow
okay,
case.
yeah, I am familiar with that case.
I love the idea of Trump skiing, but he still has on like a blue suit, red tie, white shirt, no ski helmet, just Trump, and crushing it, by the way. Just absolutely crushing it.
It happened to be a ski slope and a run that I since that accident going down to Amazon. I thought he was a pretty sharp guy, a good-looking older
4-minute
man, and I
video.
thought he expressed himself well. So I really don't know what he was after. I was just glad to hear that he ended up with the blame, and hopefully he has to pay.
All right.
Got indicted today, and of course Donald Trump got indicted today, and of course my phone wouldn't stop ringing.
Who's calling
Yeah.
OJ about this?
Exactly. Who?
OJ, did you hear about this?
What's your take, OJ? What is your take on? I just can't imagine. Yeah, one, I can't imagine that there's a world where people are like, fuck, something crazy in politics just happened. We got to get OJ on the line.
Also, OJ seems like the guy that if you actually were like buddies with him, if you did call him, he would never let you off the phone. You know, there's people
Oh my
in your
God,
life
yes.
that'll never let you off the phone. OJ seems like he'd be one of those guys.
Yeah. And I feel like not only that, but we're going to see this here, he's going to be talking about stuff and contradicting himself in the middle of his...
His legal analysis.
Yeah.
Friends from both sides of the aisle, and I'm telling them all the same thing, that I always say. I say, your opinion, man, look, I don't want to talk about this. Your opinion, just like my opinion, don't mean nothing. Our opinions are like armpits, you know? We all got them and they stink.
Have you ever heard that analogy with armpits? I've always heard it with opinions are like assholes.
Yeah, I've never heard it with armpits.
He's cleaning it up. This is family programming.
OJ
here.
has always seemed to be good at like putting the finesse on his words in just
Sure.
the right way that it's like sanitary for all to consume.
Yeah.
While behind the scenes killing people.
Yeah, that's he does worse than swear. I agree.
A lot of the times, right? So this has nothing to do with what you think, what supporters of his think, what people who don't like him think. This was 16 to 23 grand jury people who I'm sure didn't volunteer to be there, but they were doing their patriotic American duty.
He's explaining civics to us right now. You know what I mean?
Hey, if you get your civics somewhere, that's all that matters.
Get it from OJ.
I don't know what the New York situation is on a case like this, but it would be decided by 8 or 12 American citizens. I didn't complain.
Oh wait, hold on.
About
This was
ridiculous. I thought it was.
This is my favorite part because I believe I watched the whole video earlier a couple days ago. I don't think that he ever acknowledges the murder trial, but he did go to prison. We know that OJ went to prison.
He did. I would actually say before he continues, these situations are somewhat similar. I mean, not to the same degree.
Sure.
Knowing we don't know that if Trump killed anybody, we certainly don't know about it. I don't think he did. But him getting caught for hush money payments to a porn star is like a blip on the radar of what people think about him. Just like how OJ technically went to prison for like burglary and theft of his own, or like, strong arm robbery of his own memorabilia at a hotel in Vegas.
Yeah.
When really you would think he went to prison for much worse things.
Yes. And I think in both cases, and I don't want to give the wrong impression, but I think that there's like a little bit of, we really want to fucking make this hurt because we might not have a chance to get him for the thing that he really did that we find most
It's
vile.
like when you're watching a mob movie, and they always get these guys on racketeering when they've done much
evasion.
worse. Yeah, they've done much worse, but it's the only thing they can get them on, like that they can prove, so they go get them for that one tiny thing.
Yeah.
I thought it was ridiculous. I thought it was wrong, but I accepted it. I didn't complain at all. I thought it was I did not agree. I've had my share of trials. I had a trial here in Las Vegas.
No shit.
I did not agree with the decision at all. I thought it was ridiculous. I thought it was wrong, but I accepted it. I didn't complain about it was my property. I point that out. I didn't complain that it was all white jury. It was 12 Americans who decided, and I made it a point to honor those 12 Americans by being the
this
best
is the part
inmate
I don't care about.
I can be. Now I did
be the
fight
best
it in
inmate I
court.
can be.
That's where you fight something like.
Okay, so I think the rest of this is obviously like we're into mumbling more on territory, but my favorite part of this is imagining OJ every day honoring these jury members, waking up every morning, looking at a picture of the grand jury and the jury of 12 of his peers that convicted him, and saluting them and telling them, "I will honor you today."
It's like he approached going to prison the way he would approach a football game.
Yes.
Like, well, I'm here. I just got to do my very best today.
I have to make the best out of this situation.
Best inmate I can be.
It's funny. I mean, obviously it's funny that it's just crazy to me that OJ even, what I don't get about the OJ on Twitter thing is, what the fuck is he getting out of this? He's got no sponsorships.
It feels like OJ, anytime he gives a take on Twitter, it's like he's auditioning for First Take.
Yes.
Like he wants to be opposite Stephen A. Smith. Like it feels like that's where he's trying to get.
I want him to be opposite Stephen A. Smith.
If Stephen A. Smith had any balls,
you know who
he would put OJ there.
You know who I bet would fucking be on their best behavior if I bet Stephen A. Smith would be on his best behavior if he was sitting across from a murderer every day.
I don't know, man. I don't know if he would. Stephen A. Smith, his ego is too big to do that.
Have we talked about Stephen A. Smith on this podcast?
I mean, I don't know. I can't remember.
So we've done like 8 of them too.
Are you a fan of Stephen A. Smith?
I hated him for years.
Yeah.
And then like the last couple years, I'm starting to love Stephen A. Smith.
I mean, I'm more or less, I would say, indifferent on him.
Gotcha.
I don't like Skip Bayless so much.
Skip Bayless is bullshit. I hate Skip Bayless.
It feels like OJ's auditioning to be with Stephen A., but his best chance is with Skip.
Yeah, fair.
Like, if Shannon's out sick one day, plus I think Fox, they broadcast in L.A. I assume OJ still lives in L.A.
I think he lives in Vegas and Florida now.
Okay, close enough.
He's
If
no,
in Vegas-
actually, he said that he's scared to go to L.A. because he doesn't want to sit down, and he doesn't know if he's going to sit down at a bar next to the real killer of.
the streets might get OJ.
Yeah, wait, hold on.
Can't go back to
I want
LA.
the exact line because the line is so good.
Yeah, OJ, if he was on any of those types of shows, though, just for one day, everybody would watch. It would pull massive ratings because of who he is.
Yeah, so OJ says that he refuses to visit LA because he's scared of running into the real killer of Nicole Brown and Ron Goldman, thus putting himself in danger. I have a feeling if he goes there, he will run into that character.
He might run into him every day. We don't know.
And he might run into him in the bathroom when he's washing his hands and looks into the mirror.
OJ will always be one of the most captivating figures in American history.
Yeah.
He really will be for our generation especially, because this all took off. The OJ trial is like one of my first big things that I remember. I was like 10 years old when this thing started. It was very memorable. It was a huge deal. And he hasn't left consciousness since then.
Yeah.
Even as he's gone to prison, the other stuff that's happened, coming out of prison. As soon as he got out, someone got him on Twitter like the next day. They were like, the world needs OJ.
I know. It was crazy. So you were in school, we're like the same age.
Yeah.
Do you remember having a feeling about, I remember coming home and the trial was just on all day. It's always on.
Yeah.
And I would watch ESPN. It's on ESPN constantly. They were showing clips from it. And I remember the part that I spent the most time watching, I was like, I'm going to see if I can get into this trial.
Yeah.
And it was the day they were talking about ice cream melting. And I think it had like something to do with if the ice cream was this melted, then this happened at this time. It was like to help establish or debunk a timeline.
They really got into minutia in that trial.
Well, and for good reason, I'm sure, for the sake of justice. But
Sure.
Watching it as a 10-year-old or whatever I was, you're like, Jesus, this is like. How do people give a shit about this? Like, did he kill her or not? Like, why are we arguing about ice cream? Of course, there's a million implications of what that could mean, what it was involved with. I don't even know now. But do you remember at that time in your life, did you have a feeling about like what you wanted the verdict to be?
Oh, no, I didn't I just assumed, because you have to remember the media at the time. I mean, this is still back when you get all of your information through TV, news media, or newspaper media. Newspaper media is obviously going to be a little bit less biased, I would think. But TV media has always been a little bit leaning one way or the other.
Do you think that's... Cause I've thought about that a lot, because now even newspaper media, because it's like newspaper media now is like more social media presence than it used to be. And well, obviously than it used to be, but like... That's almost the thing, is like online presence. So we've lost that like working class journalism where like beat reporting is like almost, I mean, outside of sports, but I'm on the whatever, like the local police beat is like that's got to be gone. That's got to be now just like a fucking automated bot account at the best, right? Like,
I mean, journalism in general has I think there's just been this push to catch up, and I think part of catching up and playing on the same level as everybody else is having more of an opinion than just reporting,
having
fact.
Influencers.
You have to have more of a take than you did before. But back then, I mean, TV media was still trying to have an influence on these things, and popular opinion was very much against OJ in that moment.
Well, I know that now, and I know that especially because I watched The People Against O.J. Simpson, which, by the way, is amazing if you haven't seen it.
I watched the one. There's the one where they have the actors, and then the one that's like the real reporting.
Yeah.
I watched the 30 for 30. I think.
Gotcha. Yeah. So the people against O.J. Simpson is it maybe it's in like the American Crime Story franchise, I believe. It's very good. But I remember being like, I was hoping he would be innocent. Really? Yeah, and I think it was just like I loved star athletes so much. Yeah. What I actually wanted, not for him to be found innocent, but because I believed in our legal system, I wanted for him to be innocent. Like, do you know what I mean? To not have done it.
Like he didn't actually do it. Yeah.
So to me, it was like I don't want this guy.
Despite all the evidence.
Yeah, which again, I had limited attention span for.
Yeah. No, it was. I mean, it was wild. I mean, it's one of those things that you could not escape. I remember the trial kind of coincided with the Mariners' '95 playoff run. Yeah. The events happened in '94. The trial takes place in '95, and it's kind of that summer that, for me, is very memorable because the Mariners were good for the first time. So there was a lot going on in my life that really stood out, and that was one of those things. And it's inescapable at times when you have a media cycle like that is so focused on one exact thing.
Is that also the same playoffs where Dikembe Mutombo and the Nuggets beat the Sonics?
94, 95. God. Yeah, I feel like it. No, I can't remember if it was 93, 94, or 94, 95.
Let's see. Dikembe Mutombo, Sonics. Will that work? When did that? This is 20. It's so hurtful to see this.
94 NBA playoffs.
Okay,
so this is a year later. It's not the same year.
I guess it's like also that stretch of sports is very memorable to me because you're also like the baseball strike happens in there. It's like
our teams were. I mean, the Sonics and the Mariners were really good, and I was a Sonics and Mariner fan. So for me, it was very memorable.
Yeah. Were you not a Seahawks fan at the time?
Not. I mean, I was always a Seahawks fan because growing up around here as a kid. This is where.
Are you exposing yourself as a fraud?
No, this is where we're going off in a different direction because this is my issue with the 12s a lot of times. Okay. Is the people that – because I will say I'm a lifelong Seahawks fan, but the one thing you have to remember growing up around here as a Seahawks fan, unless you were going to the games, they were very hard to watch because they were typically blacked out at home because they didn't sell out. So if you lived in this general area, you could not watch a Seahawks game on TV when they were at home. Very hard to actually track down. So people were like, I'm the biggest fan. I loved watching them all the time. It's like, well, if you didn't go to the games, you really weren't watching them all the time.
Well, it's even crazy to imagine the NFL having a blackout now. Is there any team in the league that's blacking out games?
Jacksonville struggled for a long time. They were like the most recent one. Yeah. But I don't know of anybody. I don't know if that's still the case. I don't know if there's anybody that still does it. Before we get off OJ, though, can I just say the thing that really blew my mind at the time of the trial, Naked Gun, the whole Naked Gun movie series, those were my favorite comedy movies. So I only knew OJ as Detective Nordberg, and I was like, God, Detective Nordberg, who I think is hilarious, is now on trial. We don't know OJ as a football player. We were too young to know OJ as a football player. Our parents' generation certainly knew him as something different. I only knew him as an actor.
Yeah, and
I liked him as an actor too.
My dad would always talk about OJ because he's like, he ran for 2,000 yards when it was like a 12-game season or something like that.
He was the best ever at the position.
Yeah, it was. Anyway, the blackout thing is funny because I do think I would try to watch every game I could also, and I would almost. It's weird to be excited that it's a road game. Because you're like, I don't even have to have the stress. And I also think, I never did this, but my memory is if you went to Chehalis, that was far enough away from the stadium where they would.
Yeah. There's kind of like this halo around the Seattle area where you won't be able to watch it if the game's not sold out. But a lot of people who did grow up, maybe closer to Portland or down there, once you're out of that range, no problem. You can watch every game. Yeah. It's like MLB's blackout now, except MLB's blackout is much more widespread. I mean, it covers multiple states and an entire region for your team.
Yeah. Did we talk about the ads yet? But a lot has happened in my life because also the other thing that people don't realize or that we haven't talked about yet that I thought was going to be how we'd open this podcast were it not for my unfortunate news is that you and I were both on vacation at the same time, very different places. Yeah. But you and I, so I was in Portland, Oregon for the weekend. But I watched MLB opening day. We like if I'm
We haven't
talked
covered,
about,
we haven't covered any MLB yet.
yeah.
Granted, it's a long season.
Sure.
There's a lot
But
to cover.
but we even like opening day, I don't think we've podcasted. I don't think we've actually
No, we
recorded a podcast since
Not
opening
since
day.
then. It's been just under a week.
So you recommended to me, you're not like it's not a novel recommendation to me that get MLB TV, get a VPN. It's just like it's a pain in the ass. I always
It's a huge pain in the ass.
And then I like my wife gets on and she's like, "Why is our Hulu different?" And I'm like, "Oh, it's because it thinks we're in Canada. So hold on, I gotta
Canadian
fix
Hulu.
this." You know, my mom was watching our dog over the weekend, and so like I can't have the VPN on because then she'll never be able to figure out how to fix that.
If there's one thing that would really throw an older person, it's the concept of a VPN,
Yes.
let alone the act of a VPN occurring
Yes.
in front of them. Yeah.
So anyways, I did that, but then what I didn't know is, or what I guess like it makes sense intuitively, but I didn't realize how much different the experience would be, is when you watch MLB TV, but it thinks you're in Canada, you get these, so they're basically MLB TV sells, I believe, for Canada, if not for all like out of market things, like an ad package. But
Yeah.
it's only filled to the point that people like advertisers buy it. So there's not a lot of ads. You get a lot of this thing where it's like kind of this like baseball B-roll, and then it's like it's a baseball diamond, and you see like the
Yeah, that's a staple of MLB TV. Baseball Zen. that they
Baseball
do. A lot
Zen,
of people,
yes.
you can always tell, like if you're on Twitter and you follow a lot of baseball people during a game, the ones who watch on MLB TV versus a local channel.
Yeah.
The MLB TV people always talk about Baseball Zen.
yeah. So baseball Zen's happening a lot, and then it'll be like a commercial for Jelly Bellies. Like literally every ad break, there's a commercial for Jelly Bellies. My daughter is now addicted to Jelly Bellies because we watched MLB opening day.
They only have like a certain set of commercials for MLB TV.
Right.
And yeah, it's all regional. It's all based on whatever region you're in.
Yep.
The one you see a ton of. I've had entire commercial breaks where I think it's Rivers Casino is the one in Canada.
Gotcha.
It's like their sports betting casino, and they just will pummel you with Rivers Casino ads. The other, I typically set our VPN when watching the Mariners is typically set to either Canada or Miami, because
Sure.
the Mariners very rarely play Florida teams, so
Yep.
it's easy to leave it there. And Miami has some wild ads, dude. A lot of personal injury lawyers
Hell yeah.
out of Miami. My favorite is Amanda Demanda. And she has some amazing commercials.
Can we pull up an Amanda Demanda ad here? This
I would
might be-
imagine in the greater part of Florida, Amanda Demanda is quite popular because her ads are wild. And this is I've definitely seen this ad many times.
Let's see.
Marlo.
Come on now. Come on, Amanda Demanda.
From our local neighborhood streets to our busy highways. If you've been injured in a car accident, Amanda Demanda is here to help.
When the insurance companies don't want to pay, I bring on the pressure.
What the hell's going on with this YouTube? So,
Don't settle for the minimum when we fight for the maximum. Call me, Amanda Demanda, 844-DEMAND.
Local neighborhood streets.
I'm gonna go back to this because there's a thing that happened here, I believe, and I could be wrong. When I'm watching TV, sometimes I'll notice continuity errors, and I make my wife. I like rewind it and make like a very common one is someone's drinking a drink, but there's obviously been two different cuts,
Right.
So it's like halfway down this one and
Yeah.
it's full on this one. I think that the announcer is not. I think he's a voice actor who just got this script. He sees a Florida lawyer with the name Amanda Demanda as it's spelled. I believe that he gave her the Spanish pronunciation of
They
Amanda
did-
Demanda.
To our busy highways. If you've been injured in a car accident, Amanda Demanda is here to help.
Demanda. He gave it like the Dave Sims Spanish pronunciation. Demanda.
No,
Demanda.
that's the first time I ever heard this, because she doesn't say it that way. She just says it, Amanda Demanda.
She doesn't look like it's pronounced that way. She looks like
Okay.
it's pronounced
I had
Demanda.
to, I've seen so many of these ads that I had to go look this up, because she's blonde, looks like a white lady, but she lives
Is
in
she
Miami.
Cuban?
She lives in Miami. So,
Yeah.
a lot of Latin influence there, and I had to look it up. I believe she is Caucasian. But you're right. The voiceover guy is like, okay, so her name is Amanda Demanda. What a coincidence. That's great. And he just went with it, man. He pronounced it the way he thought it would. A little inflection here or there.
Yeah, that's like
If you've been injured in a car accident, Amanda Demanda.
like he even like softens the D. Demanda. It like really like great Spanish
Like,
pronunciation.
I don't think that's a real name.
I
man.
bet you this dude gets this script, who's like probably a Spanish speaking voice actor.
He's probably bilingual, yeah.
Yeah.
Being in Miami. Yeah.
He gets this script. He might not even be in Miami, but he gets this script and he's like, okay, these fucking assholes that wrote the script didn't like they didn't fucking spell it, like they didn't give it the D lowercase e capital, like, or D, like a de manda, like the, how there's like some Spanish last names or multiple words like de la Rosa.
Yeah.
It's de manda. He's like, fuck, these white bastards don't. Oh, I bet the voice actor was mad.
I'll tell you what, man. If I'm ever in Florida and I get in a car accident,
This
I
is
already
the-
got the hookup. It's
All right.
Amanda
Do
Demanda.
you recommend any? Are there any other good
No,
ones?
they're all basically the same. I mean,
right.
she has different ones, but they're all.
It's
the
a little
same.
bit like campaign ad-ish.
This
know?
is like I never. There's only like that one
Anytime
that you
someone
just
is
played.
injured while at
I've
work,
seen on
be it
TV.
something
Okay.
related to the type of work they do, or
The rest of these are just
Wow.
like her own little promotional things, I'm sure.
Amanda Demanda.
But hey, man, yeah, if you have MLB TV and you're watching set to other cities, you're gonna get some weird commercials. And I'm
Yeah.
sure if people ever watch Root Sports locally that weren't from here, they'd be like, "What is Techline Roofing?"
Yeah, well, but I mean, I think you'd get it when I'm watching this thing and it's like advertising a tire company, and I'm like, how come, or like an auto parts store, and I'm like, how have I I'm aware of auto parts stores. There's not that many chain auto parts stores in this country. How am I not aware of this? Like all across the country, you could get the same service, and I'm like, how am I not aware of this place? And then I realized that the country they're talking about is a different.
One of the last great, I feel like unheralded pieces of entertainment is local advertising.
Yeah.
Whether it's on TV or radio, it's usually so bad, and it's often written by people who like you can just tell that their family has told them they're funny.
Yeah.
Right? Like the people in their life that love and care about them, that want them to feel good all the time, have told them they are hilarious, and they're like, then I'm going to go ahead and make my own local radio ad.
Yeah.
And they try to be funny, and it's so bad that it's unintentionally funny. It doesn't hit the way they wanted it to, but
Yes.
it makes me laugh.
It's also like the guy who, when they do an ad and they want to save money, so they don't have a studio do it, so they
Yeah.
do it on like a home camcorder, and they do like most of the stuff, but there's always some element that they completely ignored. Like you're like, oh, the lighting's okay, and like it's obviously a good camera, but like the sound is just off of one of these that I love is this dude. I'm gonna see if we can get it to.
Hey, this is Ted Sadler from Mattress Ranch. I was walking through a big box store and I saw mattresses
SpongeBob tie.
standing on end. I looked at the price and said, wow, mine are less.
It's the song
and they
that
can
gets
feel
me.
them at my stores because they're laying down. Would you rather buy a mattress laying down or standing up?
Get more sleep without counting sheep.
See, this is
and
perfect. This is a
another
perfect
night
example
Yes.
of a great local
Sleep in
ad.
style with a big old smile, and you know you save some bucks. Save more bucks at the Mattress Ranch.
So there's so much about this that I love, which is one, this dude does not present as like a guy who you'd be like, oh, classic country. That's what we'll use to represent him, right? SpongeBob tie, like full suit, I think sneakers, and then a baseball hat. He's like these mattress. They used to do. They would say all the locations in the song, but now you know when you're listening to like music and it'll say like I don't have a good example of this. Oh no, a good example would be Zach Brown Band has a song where they talk about like hearing a song on the radio, but they make a version of the song for like every major like local country radio station.
I know exactly what you're
So when they
talking
reference
about.
the radio station, instead of saying like a generic thing, it'll say KMPS was the radio station
Yeah.
my mom listened to when I was growing up. Where I'd hear people, I would hear that as an example. Like,
Yeah.
and I think so he would do that, but what I think happened is they got too many locations. The Mattress Ranch is too successful.
They got 7 locations, all in the South Sound area. Parkland, Port Orchard, Lacey, Silverdale, Chehalis, Lakewood, and Puyallup. I've seen the Mattress Ranch in Lacey. They really lean into the theme. First of all, any store that like has a farm theme but is not selling farm goods,
Yeah.
it's always a bold choice. You know, like one popular one at all the outlets is it's a women's clothing store called Dress Barn. And I'm
Yeah.
like, who are you trying to attract, insinuating
good
that
point.
this is a barn for women's clothing?
Yeah.
Like, what woman's like, yeah, I got this at the barn.
Yeah.
Like, well, that's not what the vibe you're going for usually, but okay.
The Burlington Coat Factory, I feel like you walk in and you're like, oh, it's just a store in the mall?
Yeah.
Like at least the Spaghetti Factory, you're like, oh, this is like an industrial building that it's been retrofitted to have a train in it for some
Yeah.
reason, although I don't really understand how that connects to the Spaghetti Factory, but there's always a train in them.
You never want to get too into the theme of your thing that doesn't apply to the product you're selling.
Sure.
Right? You never want to get into it. But Mattress Ranch, man, if you ever go past one of their stores, they got like, it looks like a barn, first of all. They've got farm animals painted on the outside. They really lean into it, and they're just
Yeah.
out here selling mattresses. Good local ad, really hits the theme, but also lets you know we're about mattresses.
If you try to steal, they'll shoot you with a 6-shooter at high noon.
I assume
It's-
someone guards the front door with a shotgun. Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. Or at least has it hanging over the door.
Yeah. All right. What
I didn't think we were getting into local ads today, but here we are.
Yeah, well, it's the MLB TV experience is interesting because also you say I want to watch Root Sports Northwest, so I just assumed they would give. Oh, you also get the other one you get is Carlos Pena and some lady, and then another guy. It's like a Cooperstown ad. You get that over and over and over again, and you get Carlos Pena going. It was like brief biography of Jim Thorpe. Jim Thorpe, right? It's like the crazy, and he's like, I thought I was an athlete. I'm like, dude, if you thought you were the athlete as a first
Carlos
baseman
Pena?
in
Yeah.
baseball, you are fucking stupid.
I know you're new to the MLB TV experience, but MLB TV's like their own ads that they do are like notoriously terrible. Like, first of all, it's just kind of like MLB like marketing itself as
Sure.
a whole has never been like the best.
Right.
But the players that they have on their network generally are not like the most personable. Like they're fine
Yeah.
on TV, but when you have to put them in an ad to promote what they do, they just don't do a good job selling it. They're not actors by any means.
Yeah.
And the way that they produce the ads is very strange. They're just weird. They're just weird ads.
Yeah, this felt like they were going to start selling me coins at
Yeah.
the end of it. Like it felt like if you took 3 minutes out of an infomercial about Cooperstown, but you cut out the part where it's like 4 easy payments of $19.99 or whatever. Okay, so a big thing that's been like a big change in baseball has been this pitch clock. I can't remember exactly your opinion on it.
I love it. I love
You
it.
do love it.
I do.
Okay.
I only know of one person who hates it, and he's a mutual friend of ours.
Oh, okay. I think I know the one.
And he won't shut up about it. Like, dude, it's here.
He is it? I assume that's the guy that I golfed with recently.
It is.
Okay.
It is.
I'm calling him out. It's fucking. It's Sean Kemp, and he shot a gun at me after I. No. Yeah, he told me that he goes, it's a beautiful game. You don't need to change anything about it. And I'm like, the thing about that argument is, the game has changed to necessitate it, right? Like they didn't used to have 7 pitchers in a game. You didn't. There's stuff I don't like. I don't like the runner on second to start extra innings at all. To me, that like. You start to mess with the stats of baseball with that, which is a thing that I care about a lot. Like, does that guy get a run scored? Well, he didn't get on base to get that run scored. Now that like starts to fuck with the historical stats. I don't like the I actually don't like the pitch or the minimum batters faced or minimum what do they call it?
You got to face three batters.
Three batters or end the inning.
Or end the inning. Yeah. I would say among all there's been a ton of rule changes in the last couple of years in MLB. And if you are a stats lover, if you are a baseball purist, the one that is probably most innocent, that has the least effect on historical numbers, or all the data that you really care about is the pitch clock.
It's also probably returning us to something that looks more like the game did in the 1950s, 60s, 70s, whenever Trump thinks America was great.
The bootstrap era.
Yes.
But even like in the 90s, if you go back and look at like the average time of game in the 90s, it was still in like the 2 to 3 hour range.
Right.
And only like when we started doing this thing where you have 6 pitchers throwing a game and there's all these pitching changes, and Nomar Garciaparra comes along and kicks off this era of like weird idiosyncrasies from both pitcher and batter, where they spend a minute adjusting every piece of equipment on their body between each pitch. It's like once all of that starts in like the early 2000s and now until today, the game time really spikes up.
Yeah.
And what they're really just doing is kind of bringing it back to the time of game back in the 90s. And I know we talked about this a little bit a few weeks back before the season started, but my opinion in general is that the people who are really pissed about this are like either degenerate alcoholics that want to just drink at the game until they pass out, basically, and now can't do that. Still got to go home to finish drinking, or just are like they just don't want to be at home. Like they just want to escape their lives for longer. And it's like, that's fine. You look, you can pregame, you can postgame. Now you just have more time to do that. And usually that means you're drinking for cheaper. You still get to hang out with your friends and socialize. Like you can escape your life in other ways.
I've been working on a bit, I haven't even done it on stage yet, but about this. But there's a thing that this kind of thing, this like I don't want baseball to change thing, is like I call it a thing where I'm like, it's not racist explicitly, but it's like I bet it comes from racists a lot. Like I bet that's an opinion that racists
just change in general, because that's the type of person that hates change
exactly
as a whole.
I don't want my neighborhood to change, and I don't want a pitch clock on my baseball game.
Yeah, exactly. No, that's exactly what it is. It's the type of person who hates change is going to hate any and all change.
Yeah.
It just so happens baseball happens to be the vehicle that they can use right now.
Yes, exactly.
To express their displeasure over change as a whole.
To be clear, our mutual friend, if you are listening to this, I don't think this makes you racist. For a variety of reasons, I don't think this makes you racist. But yeah, I basically am into it. It's like the games, I think it's cutting like a half hour off of games. Also, it's if you want kids to get into baseball and they have basketball that's like 2 hours of action-packed action. Football is 3 hours, but there's a halftime. Football is kind of nice because you can kind of bounce in and out of it a little bit.
Yeah.
And baseball is that way too, but when it's 3.5, 4 hours, it's tough to be like, I know my daughter doesn't have that attention span.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, it's not like they're turning this into a football or basketball where they're putting a game clock, like, you know, a time frame on the entire game. We're not saying we're going to see how many runs you can score in 1 hour of gameplay. They're just asking people to pick it up. It's like if you go watch a Little League game, a high school game, probably even a college game, there's not as much of this dicking around between pitches that happens at the major league level. And all they're asking is for people to just cut out all the weird stuff you do in between, the theatrics of your pitching windup, or, you know, taking 10 practice swings and stepping out between each pitch. That's all they're asking. And I would say, you know, I was at the Mariners opening day last week, and I've never seen this happen before, but Cleveland brings in a relief pitcher, James Karinchak. He's noticeably one of those idiosyncratic pitchers in past years that kind of does a lot between pitches.
Right.
And immediately the pitch clock gets to him. He's had all spring training to get used to this. His first time in a regular season game, he kind of had a meltdown. He gets a pitch clock violation right away.
Yeah.
The crowd got amped. The crowd got into it. It's like watching a basketball game when your team forces a shot clock violation. It's like you suddenly are like brought back into the game and your energy rises because your team played great defense. Well, in this case, this guy just could not abide by the pitch clock right off the bat, and it got to him. The next pitch he throws sails to the backstop, and at that point, like, all hell breaks loose. Now people are counting down the pitch clock on him. He has a complete meltdown. He ends up giving up a 3-run home run, and Cleveland loses the game because of this one guy. And you could argue because of the pitch clock, which I'm sure if you're a Cleveland fan was not great. Maybe you hate the pitch clock now. But it was just, it added an element to the game of baseball that we've never really had before, that I think brings fans into it in more ways than just speeding up the game and keeping their interest.
Can I say, as someone who I tend to defend Seattle sports fans quite a bit in a way that I think you probably would disagree with sometimes, but I bet you would defend them too. Like, I get annoyed when like people from other cities are like, "Oh, the Seattle fans are assholes," or like they say it about Boston fans a lot, and it's like, I mean, the Seahawks fans were obnoxious after the Seahawks won a Super Bowl. Every city is full of obnoxious assholes to some degree.
Absolutely.
The fact, so every fan base in Seattle is a relatively new fan base because our teams have only existed since the 70s at the earliest.
Yeah.
And for the fan base that quickly to unite and understand exactly how you should react
Yeah.
is like, you're like, it's a little bit, I'm a little proud of the Mariners fan base for immediately going like, oh, we got him once, we can fuck with this guy the rest of the game as long as he's in, you know?
It was, yeah, I mean, I being there, it was really cool to experience that because it's the first time that that's ever happened. I mean, it'll happen again,
Yeah,
for sure.
of
It'll
course.
happen with other teams. It'll happen at a Mariners game again. But that's the very first day that the pitch clock ever existed in Major League Baseball, and that sort of thing happened. And the fans were ready. They jumped on it, and it was like, in a way, being at a Seahawks game where you do have a home field advantage.
Yeah.
You know,
Well, they have the false start counter. Are we going to have a pitch clock
Yeah.
violation
Right.
counter?
It was one of those things where if that game is being held in Cleveland, that does not happen. It
Right.
just doesn't happen. It becomes a complete, and who knows how he reacts. Maybe this pitcher still melts down in that same way.
Sure.
But absolutely, when you go from pitch clock violation to your next pitch sailing it to the backstop and completely missing your target, all the fans are now on you. And if you're at home, they wouldn't be. So
Yeah.
it actually gave Seattle a home field advantage that they certainly haven't had in baseball in quite a long time. You could argue probably about 20 years.
Yeah.
So it's cool. It was
There's
cool.
another thing that's happened in the last couple of years that I don't mind. I'm like kind of indifferent to, but the pitch comm for calling pitches has become like kind of I'm actually surprised at how little bitching I hear about it because it's like, it's such a, but it's again one of those things where to me, if you're watching a game and you're like, oh, the catcher not showing his fingers and having this imperfect like pitch calling system, if it's the same thing to me, by the way, when people, they love the human element of balls and strike calls.
Yeah.
Like, fuck that. Let's get the call right. In baseball, there's no part of me that's like, you know what was awesome about that 95 season is watching Dan Wilson's fingers for, you know, like I watched the game I watched opening day. I've watched a couple, parts of games since then. I don't miss that at all. Which I know it's not new. I know it's not this year, but it goes a step further. Shohei Ohtani, last year there were the pitch comm guys still shaking batters off, pitchers still shaking catchers off.
Catchers are calling the pitches through
Right.
the device, and the pitcher still, he can hear it in his
Right.
hat. So I think the big problem with pitch comm so far is that you tend to have these technological breakdowns. It seems somewhat frequently.
Sure.
Guys are putting a device in their pitchers are putting a device in their hat to be able to hear the call that's being called on the device by the
Yep.
catcher. A lot of times it doesn't work. This is another thing I noticed that opening day last week. Once it got pretty loud in there, I could actually see Cleveland pitchers like holding their glove up to their hat to
Yes.
be able to hear because they couldn't hear. They could not hear the pitch. And this is, again, kind of like football where if you have a loud enough crowd, you can kind of affect how things are going.
Yeah.
Which is cool.
It's
But
cool.
It adds an element. I mean, this is really smart on baseball's part because, even PitchCom was just designed to combat sign stealing after
Right.
the whole Astros Red Sox sign stealing incident. And you're right. I mean, there's a human element to calling pitches. I mean, I grew up playing a little bit of catcher in high school, and guys steal signs all the time, even at
Sure.
that level. If there's a runner on second base and they can see what you're calling and can signal their batter to let them know a curveball is coming, they're going to do that. It gives the batter a distinct advantage that he otherwise would not have.
Yeah, well, so Shohei Ohtani, though, because of the pitch clock and because of this pitch comm situation, he called his own pitches. And so what you lose from that, of course, I tried to find if anybody had done like a tally of how many times he had shaken off batters the previous year.
Yeah.
Again, it's like if the thing that you're mad about is you don't get to see a pitcher shake off a catcher, That's like an opinion that seems adjacent to racism to me. Again, I've never been like, I didn't see enough shakeoffs in that game. It's going to change the way the game looks in a good way. I will say, I don't know that all pitchers, I think Shohei Ohtani is not only one of the most physically gifted players in sports, but also understands his abilities better than most players in sports.
He's more cerebral than most.
Yeah, and I don't
sure.
think this is a thing where it's like every pitcher now is going to become the guy calling his own pitches. But I do think when a guy has 7 pitches and has like a real plan on how he wants to attack batters, I didn't even think about that as an option. And I think that's fucking great. I remember, I will say, I played high school baseball. I had a catcher named Jake Davidson. He went on to be the drummer for the band Aiden, who like toured all over the world.
That's cool. Yeah.
He was the best catcher I ever played with. And I reached a point with him where he was getting calls from the coach. I never shook him off. Like for like the first 3 games of the season, I shook him off a couple times. But when I realized what was happening, like it was coach to him, to me.
Yeah.
And they were actually like, he had a plan. Like there was not, I just fucking, whatever pitch he said, I threw. I can't imagine being Ohtani and having to be like, I'm calling the pitches, I'm throwing the pitches, I'm doing it all. And it's like, that's going to be stressful. It's a lot of shit to do all in one.
Calling pitches is probably the one thing where if you've never played baseball,
Right.
would maybe be the hardest thing to understand the process that goes into getting the right pitch to each batter.
Yeah.
And what Ohtani did, I feel like, is going to be, it'll probably become a little bit more pervasive because you're right. With the pitch clock in place, you really don't have time. Like pitchers they want to take ownership over their pitches for sure. And if the catcher calls something that they don't want to throw, you do see numerous shakeoffs until they get it right.
Yeah.
And Ohtani was like, we're just going to eliminate that beast so we don't get these pitch clock violations. That's smart. But I think a lot of pitchers tend to be simple. You have to be simple in some ways in your mind to be a pitcher because you have to shake off all the bad. You have to be able to shake off a hit. You have to be able to focus on what's immediately in front of you and what's coming up next as opposed to what just happened. And pitchers are creatures of habit. They're used to just getting a call from their catcher and making a decision in that moment. Am I throwing that or not? Usually if you're a pitcher and catcher, if you have a good catcher and you've worked together for a long time, like you just said, I mean, you kind of just get used to saying yes to whatever.
Yeah.
But there's this process involved. One of the things I've kind of not liked about the evolution of baseball is that there's been a lot more manager or coach calling pitches to a catcher over the years, which can happen with like a young catcher, right? Like you don't trust him to go out there and he doesn't know these hitters, so you're going to help him out. But when you have a veteran catcher, like, do you really need to relay a sign from the dugout to the catcher to the pitcher? It seems silly.
That same calendar year, I played summer ball. And my best friend, like best man at my wedding, also was a catcher. He played first base when Jake Davidson was on the team.
Yeah.
When Jake Davidson left the team to be a rock star, he went back to catching a lot. And but in summer ball, Jake wasn't there at all. And so he was the catcher. And I was like, I go out there to pitch and he goes, he's like calling pitches, but then he just lines up middle of the plate. And I'm like, hey, man, can you give me like a location too? He goes, oh, just throw it wherever you want. I'll catch it. And I'm like, dude, it's so funny because, and he wouldn't even, by the way, also, he wasn't really thinking through because throw wherever you want is one thing, but also it's like, I want you to think through, we just threw a fastball inside. Let's put an out-breaking curveball on the outside corner because we pushed him inside. So, like there's a bunch of strategy going on. He's not participating in it at all. He's just like, wherever that ball goes, I'll go get it, dude. Don't you worry.
I mean, that's like high school baseball for you in a nutshell.
But it's also if you had a basketball hoop and you were like, well, we'll get the hoop will catch wherever. I want a target.
Yeah.
You got to have a target.
Yeah.
It's like you can't I can't hit the outside corner. It sounds stupid, but you're like, I can't hit the outside corner unless your glove is there because I'm throwing to your glove. I'm not throwing to the outside corner. And also you can see where the outside corner is a lot better than me. You're right next to the plate.
Yeah.
I'm 60 feet, 6 inches away.
There's a ton of nuance that goes into just throwing a single pitch in baseball. Well, what'll probably happen, I could see, is like if you have a pitch comm on your catcher and you have a pitch comm on your pitcher and they both can hear what's being called, I can see like maybe there's some way you can set it up so that a manager or coach can basically just input whatever pitch they want called and basically tell both the pitcher and catcher that's what we're throwing here.
Yeah.
But, the important thing is like you have to have some sort of influence on what's being called if you're a pitcher or catcher. Because if you're a catcher, I mean, I feel like you have the best view of what hitters are doing and how they're reacting to a pitch that comes in. Like you can tell as a catcher if like this guy is not going to be able to reach that pitch on the outside corner, or he's not going to be able to hit that curveball, or he's scared. You can tell like he's scared. And if you throw him a fastball inside, it's going to mess him up for this entire at bat. And as a pitcher, if you have control over whatever pitch is being called. Because there are some days you go out there and you're like, I just can't throw my curveball. It's just not going to happen today.
Yep.
If I throw it, I'm going to spike it into the dirt. So we need to stop calling that pitch. So, what Ohtani did was cool. I think it's probably going to be one of those things that continues on and more pitchers will do it. But there's so many dumbass pitchers out there.
Of course.
It's just not going to be able to be done.
I will say my friend Matt, so he also, the other thing he was doing was he would just call fastball 1. Like that was the first pitch he called. Second. Yeah. So if I shook him off, like
Catcher's
it's curveball.
Yeah.
Anyway, that at bat, I just went out and I was like, I want to prove a point. I'm going to give up a home run. Fuck you, Matt. I'm just going to do it. So I don't even give him yes or no. The moment he puts down 1 and his glove in the middle of the plate, I just wind up and throw. I threw 3 fastballs directly down the middle of the plate, trying to give up a home run. It's summer ball, so we're not like, these don't count for anything, right? Struck the guy out 3 straight swinging. I was I was so angry.
Maybe he was right.
Yeah, maybe Matt was right.
He's got a read, and he was like, this guy can't hit shit.
All right. I mean, Manny Machado got ejected for this. Oh, one thing before, I want to get into this Angel Reese and Caitlin Clark thing, but Daniel Bard started the year on the IL for anxiety. And that's another thing that I feel like I get it. I think I'm of the age where I'm right in between going like, you can't start. That's not
the problem with anxiety, especially in sports, just the term anxiety is it's not descriptive enough, so people shit on it, right? Like like the court of public opinion, we've gotten a lot better in in recent years about accepting that anxiety is a thing that all people feel and we all react to it differently, which is important. But in sports, you still have to be, I feel like, a little bit more specific in your definition of what it is, because people will just shit on it for no reason. Daniel Bard is a relief pitcher that earlier in his career missed multiple years of Major League Baseball play because he had the yips. He just could not control where he was throwing the ball. And as a pitcher, that's very important.
It is.
And it seems like he maybe had a brief recurrence of that, and so now he's taking the proper time to...
Well, I do think calling it an anxiety disorder would be better, but I think also, like, can we just give it like a name? Like, but I first off, there's just going to be a segment of fans that never accept it, because also it's very anxiety inducing. Sports are very anxiety inducing. That's the thing about sports, is that's like the shit we talk about, like wanting it more at the end of the game and not crumbling at the end of the game. What that person is experiencing, that's when someone fails, or not fails to deliver, because some of the shit is you put up a shot and the odds of it going in or whatever amount of, but when someone crumbles, we are seeing the result of anxiety in a lot of cases. So like for this guy, I'm telling you why I have a hard time with it still. I will fully acknowledge there's probably players who we have traumatized, and frankly, like traumatized to the point of very, very negative outcomes by not being sympathetic to stuff like this. But you look at this and you're like, he has anxiety, but the whole thing is anxiety. Like the whole sports are dealing with anxiety in real fucking time all the time, you know?
Yeah, I think what is important in this case is baseball has been really bad about this over the years, but I feel like the most extreme examples of, if you want to call it anxiety-related incidents have come in baseball. There's Rick Ankiel, good example. In a playoff game, he suddenly cannot throw the ball over the plate as a pitcher.
Sure.
It's sailing to the backstop. It's spiking in the dirt. He's this uber-talented pitcher, and all of a sudden he's lost it Mentally, he's broken. He never actually recovered from that as a pitcher. He came back as a hitter and made the major leagues again, which is a tremendous story. There's Chuck Knobloch, at second base. Chuck Knobloch and Steve Sachs, both second basemen. This very short throw from second to first base. They both suffer from being able to get the ball over there. They cannot hit the first baseman with a throw.
Yeah.
Extreme anxiety. The Mariners had a catcher in the 90s, Mackie Sasser, who came up as a catcher with the Mets. He couldn't throw the ball to the pitcher, to second base. He just couldn't throw the ball anymore from behind the plate. So they converted him to an outfielder, and that seemed to be a little bit better, but it effectively ruined his career.
Sure.
This happens a lot in baseball, and it's kind of mind-boggling at times that a lot of coaches and managers would just keep running their guys out there knowing that they were going to fail and not addressing it in any way.
Sure.
Like if you know Daniel Bard is not going to be able to throw a strike, putting him on the IL with anxiety is probably the best case scenario for everyone.
Actually, that's really true.
Because if you want him to go out there and try to perform and just say, hey, you'll work through it, and he won't, it's going to hurt your team. It's going to hurt
that's a good
everything
point.
about your team. It's going to hurt your chances of keeping your job if you're the manager. It's going to hurt everybody else on the team because you're going to be losing. It's going to hurt Daniel Bard because he'll feel like a failure. So it's just, I'm not, like, whether you're sympathetic to the term anxiety or the condition as a whole, it's more like, just think of this in a performance-oriented business. How is this going to hurt the performance of what you're trying to protect?
I think that's actually, and I hate to agree with you this strongly, but I do think that's the best, is like, you go, this guy, he's not going to do it. He's not going to get good. And the way to get him better is not hard-nosed love. You know, it's not tough love. We're past that as a society. So yeah, that's interesting. And you can't, the other thing is, the way baseball is now, you can't shit this guy out. I don't know what Daniel Bard's making this year, but there's financial implications to going like, well, then get the fuck off the team, you know?
Well, that's what I like in football. You always see it with kickers, right?
Sure.
Like all of a sudden a kicker cannot make a field goal, and he was great before and now he's not. But football is brutal because with the non-guaranteed contracts, you can just cut that guy. You don't have to worry about his anxiety.
It is crazy how in football, like a game or two, a couple bad games for a kicker,
it's
we're
doom.
Like, we're blaming it all on you, dude. You fucking
doom.
get out of here.
Yeah, I mean, in some ways, people always joke about kickers and punters. They have the easiest job. They're showing up, they're running laps at the practice field, and they're practicing their kicks, and that's about it. As far as performance goes, they're not having to do as much as some of the other guys. Now, behind the scenes, they're still doing a lot. Obviously, we know that.
Yeah.
But the lifespan for those guys is so short, because one bad day at the office could be the end of their career.
Yeah, their failure is acute and obvious.
Yeah, it's like if we all have bad days at our jobs where you might show up and fuck up a spreadsheet or fuck up a presentation with a customer, but you don't usually have to worry about getting fired for that one bad day.
Well, it's also rare that you do something where you're like, this one action was the binary difference between failure and you fuck up the spreadsheet, but you're like, if you fuck up a spreadsheet, typically you've done like enough good that spreadsheet probably isn't going to be the sole reason why you win or lose that presentation or whatever.
And there's intent behind it too, right? Like if you're a kicker that's struggling, it's not like you went out there trying to miss those kicks, right? Like there's just this intent behind what's occurring, and it's the same thing with the pitcher, man. I just think, like, I remember this NBA player a few years ago. I can't remember what his name was. He was a Houston Rockets draft pick, and he was a pretty high draft pick, first round pick.
He couldn't fly, right?
Couldn't fly. And they knew this. They knew this going into the draft process. Royce White, I think his name was Royce White, and he's this really good power forward type.
Yeah.
They pick him anyway, even though they know he's going to have trouble getting on planes. And they basically try to force this square peg into the round hole. They're like, we're picking you knowing you have this crippling anxiety about getting on planes, but we're going to put you on planes anyway, and somehow you'll just make it work. And it didn't work. He didn't work. They blew this draft pick by going through this and not properly, handling this guy. And he turned into an NBA bust, which is kind of unfortunate at the same time. It's like, I'm sure a lot of people out there would say, hey, this is his own doing.
Sure.
And he had this golden opportunity to remedy himself and make all this money, and he chose not to do that.
Yeah,
And
obviously
you
the problem is where you say chose, right?
Right, like it's not a choice in that instance, right? This is something that really plagues him, and I'm sure he doesn't want it to be that way.
right.
But it is that way. And instead of trying to help make things better, I'm sure when Houston drafted him, they probably brought on some people that were there to help him.
Sure.
But clearly it didn't work, so they
Well,
didn't do enough.
But of course, like in that case, help doesn't mean like a holistic approach to help. It means help him figure out how to get on fucking airplanes.
Yeah, exactly. Help is throwing
Help him
money,
help the
throwing
team.
money at the problem without much care.
It's like in the way that HR isn't your friend.
Yeah,
Right?
They're
Like-
there for the companies, though. They
Exactly.
are like what Roger Goodell is to the owners.
HR presents is exactly. HR presents as your friend, and they are explicitly not your friend. I have recent.
You have recent experience with this. They should have fought to keep you.
It's kind of surprising. I guess this is, I believe, the Rockets in the Daryl Morey era, and I have a ton of respect for Daryl Morey, and I'm surprised. I'm gonna do a little more research on this. I've actually wanted to figure out a way to talk about Daryl Morey on here. I don't think today's the day because I want to close on what is like to me and if you have anything else you want to talk about
No.
sports wise, biggest. And I want to talk about this without presenting qualifications, and then I want to talk about why even qualifications. The biggest story in sports this weekend. Genuinely.
Yeah, this is the topic that needed two white guys to weigh in.
Well, they all do. Alex.
They all do. I mean, I've listened to enough radio and seen TV this week that all the white guys were like, "This one's for me. This is my topic."
So I will be the one to admit that so I'm going to show this second. Oops. And I didn't find the highest resolution versions of this, but so I will be the only person I think in the world to admit I did not watch the women's national championship game. Everybody suddenly, it's like, regardless of what you feel about Leah Thomas, the idea that we were all like gripped by women's swimming, college swimming, was like nobody gave a shit about that before. I didn't watch this game. I know Caitlin Clark is like one of the best college athletes in the history of.
She's very good. She's very good at basketball. She's dominating her sport. Right now.
I understand. I mean, I'm not saying she's going to beat fucking Dave Winfield. I'm saying like she's one of the most accomplished college athletes in an individual or from an individual perspective, individual production perspective. So the first thing of this is Emmanuel Acho, by the way. This is Caitlin Clark doing this like John Cena thing. And so she
putting her hand in front. If you don't know this story, first of all, I think we can preface this by saying you probably know this story by now. But if you don't, we'll give you the background because this story has been all over the news. It feels like all Caitlin Clark does is like this. You can't see me gesture, waving her hand in front of her face when she's doing well early in the game. You know, kind of her own definition of trash talk in a way.
Yeah.
And at the end of this championship game, when LSU is about to beat Iowa for their title, Angel Reese, who's a LSU player, does the exact same gesture back to Caitlin Clark and then points at her finger like, I just got a championship ring.
Exactly. So first off, this is the dream. When someone else is talking shit, the dream is to be able to go. It's like, what, love or hate Terrell Owens, him going and celebrating on the star. We all have some part of our ego that wants to do that, right? Like, I fully understand that. I understand Angel Reese wanting to. Let's take the part where she did it before. There's a part of me that wants to spike the football all the fucking time when something good happens, right?
Yeah, it's our culture really celebrates taking the high road, especially in sports. Like, we celebrate that. Like, you might have someone talking trash to you, and if you don't do anything, if you withhold your emotion and you choose not to retaliate, then you are the better person for it. In this instance, that's not exactly what happened, you know. But Caitlin Clark is she's the type of person that will get under your skin for multiple reasons if you're playing against her. One, she's really freaking good.
Yeah.
Two, she's letting you know she's good.
Yeah.
You know, and so as soon as LSU had the opportunity to throw it back in her face, they did it, and that's That's fine with me.
That's fucking exactly why you play sports.
That's exactly
it's why we love sports. It's that instant karma thing that I always talk about is like a guilty pleasure of mine. In this case, not guilty. I think that so I see these clips, I see the controversy, not having watched the game. I'm on vacation with my wife, and I'm like, sometimes what happens is there'll be this thing where you start, like, someone decides I'm going to tweet, like, as though there's a boogeyman, but there's not actually a boogeyman, right? It's like they tweet like they have a chip on their shoulder.
The great big they.
Exactly.
I always refer to it as the great big they. You see so many people on social media talk about this big they
right.
that doesn't really exist. Like, everyone does agree with you, actually.
Yeah.
There is no villain here.
Yeah, a very common thing is to take an incredibly popular stance. This is a Michael Rappaport thing, by the way. Michael Rappaport does this all the time. Take a very popular stance and then act like you're the underdog.
Yeah.
Like, act like you're in the minority and have a chip on your shoulder about it. And I'm like, there's no way anybody would look at these two things, Caitlin Clark doing the you can't see me thing, and then Angel Reese doing the exact same thing, and then adding the one very small, deserved, earned addition to it, the extra fuck you.
Yeah.
There's no way that anybody is actually angry about this. And I go online, and first off, it's the usual suspects that you'd expect. The people who, by the way, make money being controversial. Dave Portnoy, the like fucking Fox News people, like those folks. I'm not surprised to have those people be, but like Keith Olbermann, it's like one of the few times where I look at it and I go, like, Robert Griffin III is on the, like, more quote unquote liberal side of this thing. I'm like, we know something is going on here. It was like, I've never seen something that was so much more clearly divided on, even if the intention isn't racism, that was divided on racial lines.
It became, as a lot of topics, I mean, this topic blew up because there were so many different factors at play. Like you said, one, race.
Sure.
Angel Reese is black. Caitlin Clark is white. Geography and class. LSU versus Iowa. Two very different parts of the country.
Right.
Right. You have people that will immediately take a topic like this and turn it into a political divide, which the people that stir the controversy, like the ones you just mentioned, they're trying to do that. They're trying to make this a political topic. And then you have the gender aspect too. This is women's basketball, right? Women's basketball, let's be honest, 20 years ago was considered a punchline. Sure. And I'm not saying that it was considered a punchline to you personally or even society as a whole, but everyone joked about it. It was literally a punchline. And we've made strides in the last few years to support it more. And whether you are into, like, I don't personally watch a lot of women's basketball, but I certainly support their right and their fans' right to enjoy it.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it's not something that I'm going out of my way to watch. And it's not that I'm against it. I just don't have I don't want to devote the time to it. I mean, you think about, this is where I understand why people just can't always get into sports the way you and I do or other people do. It's like, time is precious. Only as you get older do you realize how valuable your time is. And so whether you watch women's basketball or not, like you were saying, no one should be upset about this. It's basically the equivalent of just saying scoreboard to somebody, pointing at the scoreboard when you're winning and they're talking trash and being like, hey, you can say anything you want. I'm winning. I'm winning this game. I
have a joke that I've been working on, which is going to be just a thing that I say annoyingly throughout this podcast, so I'm going to stop apologizing for it. But this is one that I've done, and this is like a line that killed in conversation but did not work on stage, which is it's like about being like a boring dad. And then I say, I get really happy when I see a running back give the ball to the referee instead of spiking it or whatever, like after a touchdown. And I think it's for the joke. I trash talking, celebrating, like the celebrations in football, I fucking love them. I think they're awesome. This to me, I will say the one positive is I think that Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese have both handled this fucking amazing, including Jill Biden invites the losing team.
Jill
and
Biden
Caitlin
did
Clark.
if you whether or not you support Joe Biden's husband, Joe Biden did just about the whitest thing
Yeah.
you can possibly do.
And especially with this racial controversy, it feels like she's like, well, can we get the white ones to come too? You know, like it's not, it's bad. It's bad optics, but also it's like,
She got
if
immediately
women's
dragged.
sports is to be taken seriously, which you and I are saying it should be taken seriously, you got to stop treating it like community theater. And part of that is Dave Portnoy is going to have a bad fucking crazy take on it sometimes. Skip Bayless, Keith Olbermann are going to have bad takes on it. There's going to be arguments.
Yeah.
There's going to be heels. There's going to be fucking boogeymen. Like, that's sports.
In a lot of ways, this moment was kind of a transcendent moment for women's sports. Whether you are
Fully agreed.
Whether you are for or against women's sports, this is a transcendent moment for women's sports because of what you just said. Because those people that are well known for their bad takes, they weighed in with their bad takes.
Yeah, 20 years ago, the Dave Portnoy of the time would not be talking about this.
The worst thing you can have with any sort of entertainment industry is apathy.
Yeah.
And women's basketball, college sports as a whole, they're very much in the entertainment industry. Of course, they will always package it as they're student athletes. It's
Sure.
all about the school. It's all about education. It's not really that way. It's a money-making entertainment industry. And you have people talking about this the same way they talk about events in men's sports. Now, you can argue that they are harping on this because these are women and they wouldn't do that with men, because we see it with men often where
Sure.
where someone talks shit and then another person retaliates and no one really bats an eye. That happens all the time. I think the expectation a lot of times with the people that have taken great offense to this is that these women should be acting like quote unquote ladies, right? Like proper, like what their idea is of how someone should act. But the reality is people are reacting to this the way that they react to the biggest events in men's sports. And that in some way or another is a step towards equality.
I don't even think it's in some way or another. I think that's an incredible sign for women's college basketball and women's sports in general. And I think that's why I said, like, I don't want to qualify this is like surprisingly or whatever. Like, this is a thing that we're all fucking talking about. And it's not like, the other thing about it is, it's not about whether these women are attractive. It's not any of that shit. It's not like the standard misogynistic talking points. It's this fucking lady did a thing and like her team wins. She does a thing that's controversial and we're all talking about it on the same merits that we would talk about men's sports on. And then of course there's the thing where I never saw a single, to me, a thing that happens with this kind of thing is when women's sports goes through the ecosystem that includes mostly like hyper liberal, very sensitive fans, and you kind of get put out into the Shark Tank that is, there's going to be takes that are very negative that would, in your circle, in the small scope of sports media that was covering women's sports, but with the agenda of progressing women's sports, it's going to feel like it's misogyny sometimes when it's just a standard issue dog shit take from a fucking troll. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I definitely know what you're saying. I kind of look at this to maybe put it in more relevant terms for at least people around here. I look at it the way you would kind of look at the progression of soccer, right?
Sure.
Soccer, the fans can be a little bit elitist. We know that.
Yep.
They don't always let people in. When some sort of event becomes a big story, like this is becoming a big story, and everybody feels like they have to have an opinion on it, it probably feels like to the true diehard soccer fans that they're being phased out, or that people should appreciate their sport. If they're going to weigh in on this incident, then they should appreciate the sport as a whole. But part of getting your sport to that level is, it often starts with controversial things like this, and then people get wrapped up in it later on. I know it's hard. It's kind of like a backwards way of approaching like fandom in general, or an appreciation for what it is you're doing. But sometimes it takes incidents to draw people in so that your sport or your team or whatever it is can grow into something much bigger.
Yeah. Fully agree. I think it's in the same way that like journalism used to be this kind of like objective thing, those, and kind of like the way fucking politics is, the way that sports fans view it is like anything that hurts my sport is bad.
Yeah. It's like the phrase that can be a little too generic at times. That any publicity is good publicity.
Right.
You know, sometimes that can be the case if you're trying to grow something,
Yeah.
anything. And this is one of those things where it's like, there's a lot of people that see this as positive publicity and others who see it very much as negative.
Yeah.
Either way, it's helping this sport in this case.
If
It's bringing
these-
eyes onto it.
If a controversy like this is Caitlin Clark, is she a junior or a senior?
I have no idea.
Wow, well, we're fucking part of the problem. But in the event that there could be a rematch, let's see, Caitlin Clark. I wanted to say there was like at least a fifth-year senior transfer opportunity potentially, but let's see. Oh, by the way, what I was saying, Caitlin Clark declined that invitation and has also defended Angel Reese, which good on her. She's the only person.
It's good sportsman. I mean, look, anyone who's ever played sports before, and this is, my wife accuses me of hating people that really love sports but never played sports because that's a little bit of a blanket, you know,
Sure.
but a little bit of a
I think she's
generality.
onto something though. If I'm
Yeah, but there is a nuance to sports that you cannot understand if you haven't played it. And I think this is one of those situations that plays into that because in the heat of the moment, when you're playing basketball or any sport that has this much emotion, especially in a situation, a national championship.
she's a junior.
Okay, so unless she goes pro.
Typically, I don't think that they're going pro.
No,
early,
not often. But in a situation that is this heightened emotionally, you're going to have this go on. I mean,
Yeah.
you have this go on in pickup games at the Y, you know, so you're certainly going to have it go on in the
course.
national championship with so much riding on a game like this. And this is where, you know, if you're on the outside looking in, whether you're a sports person or not, you have to put yourself in the context of that moment, which is
Yeah.
that everybody sees this as being okay. You expect this on a basketball court from your opponents. You expect
Sure.
to be called names. You expect to be yelled at. It comes to blows sometimes, and that's a totally normal thing. And if you are a person who plays at that level, that's played countless games in your life, you expect this, and it doesn't really bother you. That's what makes you good at what you do.
Yep. All right, you want to play the home run game?
I do. I've got one ready for you right now, and I understand my role here, which we need some drama, we need some theater. I need to get you back in the game a little bit.
Oh
So,
no, don't do that.
Well,
we're very early into the season. Jesus, no, I don't need some sympathy. Fucking.
It's not sympathy. First, we're gonna do a little extra credit here. This doesn't count towards the game, but I want you to try and guess the player first, and then we'll do the home run.
Okay.
Okay. So I'll give you number of years this person played and the teams they played for. You tell me the player. 12-year Major League vet. Played with the Dodgers, the Mariners, and the Angels.
Okay.
Infielder by trade. Last season was 2014. Career spanned from 2002 to 2014 in the major leagues. Any idea?
I mean, my first.
Speedster, kind of.
I'm. No. Why can't I?
It's Sean Figgins.
Oh, you okay?
I started with the Dodgers.
Yeah, that's what
because I
fucked
knew
me
if
up.
I went,
Yeah.
I knew if I went Angels, Mariners, Dodgers, I thought you would get it. End of
I don't
it.
like this one because it feels like you're giving me one that has so few that I can't fuck it up by very far. That's what.
Well, that's kind of the idea. I'm trying to bring you back into it a little bit because we have to create the theater as the season goes on. If I start pulling away in this game,
That's true.
it becomes fun for nobody, not
Okay.
for you or me or anybody who might actually stay till the end to listen to this thing.
Yeah.
So, as I said, 12 years in the big leagues, obviously not known for his
Watch me
power
miss it by 100 still
or his
somehow.
hitting, or if you're a Mariners fan, not known for his ability to play baseball at all.
Yeah. Well,
But he
had
did
a-
exist.
He's a guy early in his Mariners career, obviously, well, through his whole Mariners career, but early in his career when he was struggling, it was like very annoying because he was early on and you're like, okay, that's kind of what's going on with Mariners fans in this exact moment right now, where it's like, it's very early in the season. Can we not have a fucking meltdown as a fan base?
Yeah.
Like, now, Sean Figgins, it was justifiable, but like, can we enjoy more than a week? We're fucking writing the whole season off after a week.
Yeah. I mean, the Mariners were pretty stupid to sign a 32-year-old guy who relied on speed.
I will say at the time it was lauded and I liked it. So my opinion was that it was a good signing at the time. I was wrong.
Really quick before you get to the home runs, I didn't realize this until just now, but in his first year in Seattle, Sean Figgins stole 42 bases.
Damn.
That's pretty good. I mean, that wasn't his highest in his career was 62 in 2005 with the Angels. But the fact that he still came in and stole 42 bases for as little as that dude got on base is pretty impressive.
One thing that annoyed me too was that dude played every infield position in the outfield, and then the Mariners were like, nope, third base. It's all yours.
He was designed to be a super sub, and they tried to pigeonhole him into a couple different positions.
Even
over
at
the
second
years.
base, the expectation of power is so much lower. And if you're playing, a super sub, you're like,
silly.
yeah.
The one thing for the Mariners is that he was coming off his one All-Star appearance the year prior as an Angel.
Yeah.
But even still, 32-year-old guy who relies on speed, like, you know what you're getting into here, and it's not good.
Yeah. Okay. So obviously not a big power guy. We've talked about that. I'm hesitant to go too low, but I don't think there is such thing as too low. Sean Figgins was like hit a lot of double. I'm going 27 home runs.
Very close. You are only 8 away. He was
damn.
35 career home runs.
Okay.
He had fewer home runs in his career than a lot of guys have in a season.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, so now what I want you to do is, if you're going to do this thing where you're trying to make the game close, that's the only way to do it. I don't want you guessing wrong intentionally.
No, I would never blow it the other way. I'm always going to try to get as close as possible. But I understand that at times I might have to.
I hate
But
this.
you might have to do it too. There's
thanks,
it's early.
Alex.
It's early
Thanks,
in the
Alex.
season. It's early. It's like the 1 in 4
By the way, I
minutes.
noticed you're wearing glasses today. We haven't pointed it out.
It's
but
early
the first-
morning. I haven't gotten into context
my
yet.
God. Okay, my guy is a guy who he's one of those guys that you're like, I cannot believe this man did not play for the Mariners. It seems like there's no way he could have possibly not played for the Mariners his entire career, but I'm looking at his baseball reference page, and he did not ever play for the Mariners. In fact, I feel like I could almost own a jersey of his. He was like perennial trade rumor in that like kind of Carl Everett, Al Martin category where you're like, he was just always available at the trade deadline.
Yeah.
Played 14 seasons.
What teams?
The many teams.
Oh, wow. Okay.
The Milwaukee Brewers, the New York Mets. You want to try to guess the players? Is that what you're going to try?
Brewers and Mets?
Brewers, Mets.
Jeremy Burnitz.
It's Jeremy Burnitz.
Boom. I don't even
Nicely
need the
done.
rest of the
That was
teams.
great. That was great. So 14 seasons, somehow never with the Mariners. I think maybe Corey Hart is who I'm.
Corey Hart. Yeah, he was a Mariner.
Because he was a Brewer and then a Mariner.
Yeah.
And then they might have had another lefty, because Burnitz was like a lefty, like bad defensive corner or outfielder.
He had some really good seasons. I mean, he was in the middle of the steroid era. I'm not saying he used steroids, but he was in the middle of like the home run steroid era, and he stood out as a power guy.
One-time All-Star.
Yeah, that sounds right.
3 times received MVP votes. No Silver Slugger, no other awards. Played all 3 outfield positions at times. I got to imagine his time in center field was very limited. But it happened late in his career. His last appearance in center field was at 36 years old. He played 3 games, 19 innings for the Chicago Cubs in center field.
Burnitz was one of those guys that was like quietly good every year.
Sure.
But he played in markets where he was either not the star attraction, or he played in like Milwaukee where you just didn't see him.
There was no
that
star
often.
attraction.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But he always stood out to me as a guy who was kind of like underappreciated for what he did.
Sure.
Yeah. How many years did you say he played again?
14 seasons.
14 seasons. Okay. And he was like pretty decent power guy, not like not a world beater by any means.
The process. I didn't even walk through the process.
Yeah,
I was supposed to start walking through the process.
14, you said 14 seasons, and I would say he probably averaged about 25 to 30. And he probably didn't play a couple of those seasons full. So he's probably around the 250-ish range, but maybe a little higher just because he stood out during an era where everybody was hitting home runs. So I'm going to say 289.
Pretty goddamn good. It was 315, which I did not think, because his career must have ended after the 300 home run, like, milestone.
Yeah.
Stopped mattering.
In the 90s, everyone got 300.
Sure.
Yeah.
But I guess I thought that I would have seen, like, I would have connected him with that milestone. And that's kind of one of the things that I'm trying. I think an interesting thing about this game is to get people on either side of the milestone where you don't expect them to be above 300 home runs. Because Jeremy Burnitz, you're like, he was just like around forever, but never, like, even I think spent a lot of years as like a platoon guy.
Yeah. He's one of those guys, again, with recency bias. The end of his career, he really dwindled. You know, a lot of those guys that were big power hitters in the middle of their career, they kind of they limp to the finish line at the end because the power's not there anymore, and they never really hit for contact. So it becomes tough to just kind of maintain. But they have this reputation where they keep getting jobs.
Yeah. Well, and also he gets drafted in the first round. He's a first round pick. So it's like, I think he comes with some prospect pedigree too.
Yeah.
And then that's like a kind of like the Billy Bean type of dude that sticks around forever.
Because he wasn't a big guy, right? He was like maybe like 5'10", 6 feet tall. Like
6 foot, listed at 190. I'd bet later in his career was a little above 190.
Yeah, so he's listed at 6 foot 190, so he's probably like 5'10". You know, like he doesn't look like a power hitter at all. You know, and he wasn't like a lot of the guys that in his era, he wasn't like yoked. You know, like a lot of those dudes.
Yeah.
He wasn't a hulking figure by any means, but he just made good contact and hit the ball hard, man.
I will say unpopular Jeremy spelling, Jeromy.
Oh yeah,
don't like that one.
He's a journalist nightmare. You know, he's got like the typo name kind of.
I do think at a point he was a thick man. I think he reached. Oh yeah, here we go.
Oh yeah, he's built like a beer keg, but he's not like muscular jacked.
Sure.
He's just built like a beer keg. He's just a big dude. He looks like he would win arm wrestling competitions.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, here we go. This is a good one of Jeremy Burnitz looking quite.
I mean, if you had to pick like an all beer drinker team just based on look, he'd be on it for sure.
Yeah, and then the rest of it would just be any Giambi that ever played.
all Giambis, yeah.
All right.
No, he does. I will say he does feel like a guy the Mariners would have signed in like 2008 to be the DH, banking entirely on 5 seasons ago in his production then, and selling him to the fans as like this superstar that hit 50 home runs once, and really at the end of his career he's got nothing left in the tank.
The guy I was worried that would become is Eugenio Suarez, but he seems to have
good
resurrected
vibes only. Good vibes.
All right, thank DKC McLean everywhere.
Alex SSN. That's
me.